Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again and we're going to go back to Sjælland in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but I think it is fair to say that this brewery is still best known for their different kinds of IPAs, although in recent times I've seen that they've been experimenting a little bit more with sour beers and also with the bigger, stronger, darker, more malty side of things too. In fact, I think the last review that we had from these guys on the channel was a big imperial stout, and that was pretty damn solid, I have to say. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is on the lighter side of the spectrum. It's a style that I know these guys can do very well, and it's also going to be the strongest beer that I've had within that particular style category from these guys, so should be quite interesting. I've heard very good things about it itself as well, so yeah, quite curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Hvidovre, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not, because Danish is very difficult, but you'll find that to the southwest of Copenhagen, the Danish capital, on the island of Sjælland, the easternmost of the main Danish islands. But that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Slowburn Brewing Cooperative. This particular beer is called Layers of Light. It comes in at 8% ABV, or 8.5% ABV, I'm sorry, and this one is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was bought at Kiosk in Copenhagen, who I buy a number of Danish beers from, along with Beer Hive down in Amar. But yeah, both are very good stockists of Slowburn Brewing Cooperative, and these guys are very much an established but still up and coming Danish craft brewery in my opinion. So definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. But like I say, the strongest IPA I think I've had from these guys, if memory serves me correctly, and it's also one of their latest releases as well. So let's crack on with this one and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Slowburn Brewing Cooperative before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and you can of course go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on, country, city, state, county, province, prefecture. We've got a geography based tagging system on here. Search for whatever you like, whatever takes your fancy, and you can also check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Danish playlist, and that is being added to very often, of course, because I live in the south of Sweden and Copenhagen is just across the water. But yeah, let's crack on with this one and we'll chat a little bit about Slowburn Brewing to start us off before we taste the beer. So, Slowburn Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Hvidovre, to the southwest of Copenhagen on Sjælland, the easternmost of the main Danish islands, and this company was founded back in 2018 by Amalie Knage, Stefano Irene and Andrew Keaton. So Amalie actually worked for Ølenbrud, one of the various Mikkeller venues around Copenhagen, and she also worked for Kiosk where this beer was bought. But she started one of the first kombucha breweries in Copenhagen. This was called Hvidovre Kombucha, and then gradually she moved into home brewing beer. But these days at Slowburn, she assists in the brewing and manages the sales and distribution side of things. Stefano, on the other hand, is the head brewer. He originally comes from Milan in Italy and studied biotechnology before he went on to work for Birrificio Rurale in Italy, and then he moved to Denmark to work for White Labs Yeast Company and also for the Fermentorum Beer Bar, which is quite close to Kudbøen in Copenhagen, the meatpacking district, very close to the central station. Definitely check it out. Andrew, on the other hand, is originally from the US, and he moved over to Copenhagen back in 2010 when the Nordic beer scene was very much in its infancy. But he comes from a background in software engineering and development, and he deals with the finance and social media side of the brewery, but he also experiments with sour beer and barrel aging as well. So a number of the sour beers that you've seen coming out have had a little bit of involvement from Andrew recently as well. But over the last few years, they've been working to establish themselves. They've gradually increased the capacity of the brewery. From what I understand, they're opening up a tap room at the brewery every so often too, so I will need to keep an eye on that and see about going down there at some stage, because I would like to go and see it. But yeah, they've been doing some really nice beers. As I said, they probably are best known for the different kinds of IPAs these days. They've got a kind of core range of a New England, which is called Vox Vulpi, if I remember rightly. There's a West Coast one in there as well with the whale on it. I forget the name, but they've also got the Octo Pills, which appears every so often as well, and that's a lovely, lovely beer. And beyond that, they are just experimenting a little bit. Some sour beers, some bigger, darker, malty things as well. And yeah, this is a really interesting brewery to keep an eye on at the moment because they are so new. But as of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different kinds of beers, and I'm sure we will see more from them at some point over the next little while. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Slowburn Brewing Cooperative for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out some of my older reviews or have a look at the Untappd page if you want to learn a bit more about some of the other beers that these guys have done. So, yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at this beer itself. That's everything I can really tell you about Slowburn Brewing Cooperative. So, yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is very, very nice. I think this is a Jaguar, if I remember rightly, or maybe a Lynx. I'm not so up to date with my different kinds of cats, but there you can see it. Layers of light, this one. I just thought the artwork on this was very nice, but you'll always find nice kind of natural and natural artwork with a kind of minimalistic background from Slowburn Brewing Cooperative. But there you can see the brewery's symbol on the can, of course. Plain silver top on it. This is a 440ml can, and I believe I paid about 55 Danish kroner for this, so that's going to be somewhere in the region of 75 Swedish kroner, something like that. So about €7.50 for the can, £7 sterling, maybe about $8 American, just for those of you watching in different places. But like we said earlier, this one is an 8.5% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is hopped with Idaho 7 and Strata. So we know these hops fairly well. Strata comes in about 14-15% alpha acid. It's an American hop, and it's going to give you quite a distinct melony, but also kind of strawberry type character. Idaho 7 is about 14% alpha acid, and it's going to give you also American incidentally, but it's also going to give you these kind of very soft tropical fruit notes, mangoes, apricots, papayas, all of this kind of thing. I don't think we've ever had these two hops together on their own in a beer before either, so this should be really interesting. But yeah, 8.5% New England Hazy, Imperial Double IPA, this one. Let's crack open the Layers of Light from Slowburn Brewing Cooperative in Hvidovre on Sjælland in Denmark. I really need to go and visit their brewery tap room and see what we have on the go in there. But yeah, we'll see what this beer is going to be like. So I think for the moment that is all we kind of need to take a wee look at the beer itself. So this isn't one of the more hazy New Englands that we've had before, but in fairness they do just list it as a double IPA. So maybe it's going to be one of these more kind of American type IPAs. I was calling it New England because it says it contains Hvidovre, as the Danish would say, or wheat and oats, as you might say in English. But yeah, as you can see, when we poured this beer, it poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of bubbly white head there. You've got a nice mix of bubble sizes there, some smaller ones and some medium ones as well. But yeah, colour-wise, this is quite interesting actually. It's got a more kind of deep, very slightly amber leaning yellow colour, this one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour beer. Any barrel aging you do or any adjuncts you put in will affect that too, but when you come to IPAs and things like that, very often you don't have to care about those latter two variables that I mentioned. But certainly this one is a very deep, kind of rich yellow with a very slightly amber leaning colour actually. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but the head has incidentally faded away to be a kind of nice thin foamy layer on this one. But as you can see, if this is meant to be a New England, it is certainly not one of the more kind of hazy ones that we've come across. It's not one of the more soupy and gloopy ones. So remember, in these beers quite often the thing that causes your haze is the oat and wheat content. But yeah, I think this one is simply kind of unfiltered, to be honest with you. So as I say, we're maybe expecting more of a kind of American type IPA from this one. So in my experience, the beers that they call American IPAs have a little bit of the kind of West Coasty type sweetness and maybe a bit more bitterness, but they also have kind of some of the smoothness and creaminess that you'd expect of the New Englands. So I've got a feeling that's maybe what we're in for with this particular beer. But yeah, lovely looking beer. This one, nice little bit of natural kind of hazy bit to it. But yeah, certainly looks the part. Nothing overly surprising about this one, but yeah, as you can see, certainly if it is meant to be New England, it's not the haziest one that we've come across recently, actually. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the aroma of this beer. Let's have a wee look at, or everything we need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma and see what it has in store for us. Oh, it's quite interesting. So first off, this beer is actually a little bit more kind of malty, and yeah, it is actually a little bit more kind of malty and sweet compared to a number of IPAs I've come across recently. But at the same time, you have got quite a bright green component to it, and you've also got some nice kind of oily fruity characters as well. So I'm just going from the aroma, I think this is one of these ones that fits more into the kind of American IPA category rather than anything else. Yeah. But I will say aroma wise it is quite nice actually. It's got a really kind of candied fruity note to it also. So yeah. The way that this beer goes about its business, I think, is very, very nice. Big oily and sweeter IP actually. Earlier in the day I reviewed one from Root and Branch in the States, and that was a big kind of smooth creamy sort of thing. So this is actually a nice kind of follow on from that, come to think of it. But yeah, aroma wise this is pretty damn nice, I have to say. So yeah, let's break this down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. But this is one of the more kind of sticky, sweet and floral, oily, fruity kind of IPAs I've come across in recent times. But yeah, backbone of the beer, you've got a nice little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready bread crust in there. Absolutely, that's forming the backbone of the beer. I do get some nice kind of woody aromas coming out of it. Yeah, so some nice kind of woody aromas coming out of the beer as well. One or two Jacob's cream crackery sort of things in there also. But yeah, it's actually, yeah, a little bit of bread crust, a little touch of woodiness, wee bit of Jacob's cracker, and then you've also got that nice kind of white bready character on top of it. So some nice fluffy white bready characters in there. A big thick kind of as I say, quite a big thick and almost dense character there. So you've got that nice thick wheaty character coming out of it too. So I like how that I do like how all that goes together. So yeah, you can smell that the wheat is kind of densifying out this beer, but it also gives the beer a kind of degree of smoothness and almost a slight sweetness as well. So yeah, bread crust, bit of wood, Jacob's cream cracker, fluffy white bread from the barley malt, then the thicker, smoother wheat in there. Then on top of that, you're getting the oats, and the oats really give this beer a big degree of smoothness as well. Actually, it's kind of interesting because they don't smell overly creamy. You are getting a little touch of that dryness out of them, but they do actually smell very smooth and very sweet in some kind of way. And as I've always said, when it comes to the oats in an IPA, they can always be an indicator of how fresh your beer is, because the more creamy they smell, the fresher your New England IPA is going to be. We are talking about American IPA here, I suspect, rather than New England. But anyway, oats, the smoother and creamier they are, the more fresh your beer is. The drier they are, the older the beer is. That's the kind of basics of it. But on top of the oaty side of this beer, there's a good little. I am getting a bit of a straight up caramel out of this one, but at the same time, I'm also getting a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that particular sense is quite nice. So you are getting a good degree of sweetness in there, but definitely just from the aroma, it's striking me as a little bit more of a a kind of American IPA. It's not 100% West Coast. It's not 100% New England. It's got a mixture of both in there. It's got the sweetness of the kind of West Coast side of things, but it's certainly more of it's certainly got a lot more of the kind of smoothness and things from the New England side of things, and it also contains the wheat and the oats, so it makes sense. To be honest, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. So let's go on to the hoppy side of things. So this one for me, the green component is quite big and floral in a sense. You've got quite a bright floral aromaticity to this one, but also a good little bit of a kind of zesty, grassy character as well. And I think both hops are capable of giving you that. Like both are about 14-15% alpha acid. Remember though, in IPAs we have three types of hoppings. Early addition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil gives you mainly bitterness. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. But that's, you're also going to get the dry hopping in there as well, which gives you only flavour and aroma really. But when it comes to New England's, they tend to use the latter two. West Coasts tend to use all three. When it comes to American IPAs, I think they tend to mix it up a little bit. So I think with this beer, just going by the aroma, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of early addition hopping, but I think again this is relying mainly on late addition and dry hopping, just because of how bright the green component is. That it's usually more dank and deep if there's been a lot of early addition hopping used. But we'll just need to see. Might prove us in we might get proved wrong in the actual flavour of the beer. It's easier to tell that way. But on the fruity side of things, if you know these hops, this beer does kind of give you what you would expect. So I'm getting a little bit of passion fruit out of this one, but a very juicy and quite ripe mango. A lot of melon as well. So the melon and the mango are kind of intertwining in this one. The melon is going to come from the strata in this one. The mango is going to come from the Idaho 7. So both of these, the melon and the mango, are kind of interacting and giving you this almost very, very ripe mango quality. But definitely a wee bit of passion fruit in there. You've got the melon and the mango. You've got a nice bit of kind of apricot and smooth apricot, juicy pineapple as well, which will be coming mainly from the Idaho 7. And you do get just this little bit of like a soft strawberry note, which will be the strata as well. And there's almost just a wee bit of gooseberry to this beer as well, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, the fruity character in this one is quite different to a number of other IPAs that we've had in recent times actually. It's a very oily and kind of sticky smelling IPA, this one, when I think about the other ones we've had recently. But needless to say, I think it smells pretty damn interesting, and I'm curious to see how that kind of transpires when we go on to taste the beer. So let's put the rest of it out into the glass, and we'll have a taste of this guy and see what we think of it. So yeah, this one is the Layers of Light, a hazy double IPA, as they're describing it, 8.5% ABV from Slowburn Brewing Cooperative in Hvidovre, to the southwest of Copenhagen on Sjælland in Denmark. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, and cheers. Yeah. Now this is interesting for me because I think, just going by the flavour profile, I'm going to say straight away, I think that to call this beer American IPA rather than West Coast or New England is pretty accurate. It does remind me, I've seen beers that have been labelled like Colorado or mountain IPAs, and this beer kind of reminds me of that. So the first impression of it is that it has the sweetness and some of the bitterness of the West Coast IPA, but it also has a lot of the kind of smoothness, creaminess, and the fruity character is a little bit more. It's a kind of, the fruity character is a mix between the two, but yeah, the kind of smoothness that this beer has is a little bit more kind of New England, to be honest with you. So as I've said before, there's, when it comes to, they're describing this one as hazy. I thought it just said on the can double IPA. So if we consider it as a New England in this case, for me, there are 6 ways a New England can go, 6 things to care about. The kind of farmhousey yeasty notes, the rye leaning grain, those are more common in American brewed New Englands, as I've said. You've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also a kind of brown sugary sweetness. When it comes to the more West Coast side of things, these beers can go 2 ways. They can be more oily and caramelly, such as Sierra Nevada Torpedo, or they can be more kind of biscuity, if you like, and bready, such as the Russian River Pliny the Elder. So yeah, this beer for me has the kind of bready and biscuity side of the kind of Pliny the Elder type thing. It's kind of like that on the West Coast side of things, but in terms of its New England, qualities, it is a bit more sweet, and it's a more kind of thick, wheaty and white and barley malt leaning type thing. So it's a really interesting beer, this one, to say the least. I think this goes together really, really well. So yeah, flavour wise, this beer is pretty nice. It's got a little bit of everything. So yeah, definitely a more, if I think about this compared to the other IPAs we've had, it's more sticky, kind of oily type thing. But I like it. I do like it. It's been a while since we've had an IPA from Slowburn as well, so it's a bit difficult to compare them to the other ones. But let's break this down anyway. So middle third of your palate, you can feel the backbone of this beer. You've got a nice little bit of a kind of fresh, white bready bread crust in this beer. That forms the backbone of this beer, absolutely. So, fresh white bready bread crust toward the front of that middle third of your palate. There is a tiny little bit of that woody note. I've been getting a lot of woody note out of some of these IPAs in recent times, but it's very, very minimal in this one. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust that gets a little bit grainier the further into the aftertaste you go. There's a very thin layer of a kind of wholemeal brown bready note in this beer as well, and again you'll notice that further into the aftertaste. But above that, you've got quite a dense white bready character from the barley malt in the beer, and that kind of sits there. But above all of that, you'll feel the more dense wheaty note out of this. And the more that you drink of this beer, I think it gets more and more wheaty, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, as I say, white bread, wholemeal bread, a little bit of that dense kind of white bread from the barley malt, and then the thicker, you can feel the wheaty layer in this, and the wheat in this beer instantly is very, very smooth, and just, it really does act as kind of thickening agent, but it has a little bit of bitiness to it, but not on the middle third of your palate. We'll come back to that in a minute. Above that as well, you can get the oats, and the oats and the wheat are really acting together in this beer just to make the middle third of your palate feel very, very thick, actually. So I like that. So yeah, as I say, the wheaty and the oaty character in this one, they really just give the beer a big smoothness. But on top of the wheaty layer, you can taste the oats, and the oats go right down the middle line of your tongue, and they're quite thick. But as I say, they're very smooth, and you almost just get a little tiny touch of an almost like very slightly vanilla-like sweetness there. This beer is very, very fresh, of course, but you can feel as you move out toward the edge, as you move out from the middle line of your palate toward the edge of that middle third of your tongue, you start to get a little bit of you start to get a little touch of the oaty dryness out of this beer, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there's a little bit of that, there's a little touch of that kind of oaty dryness in there, which I do really quite like. And then above all of the oatiness, you start to get some of the sweetness in the beer. So if you go to the dead centre of your palate with this beer, of course you're going to get just a little bit of that alcohol-y sweetness. So dead centre of your palate this one, there is a bit of sweet caramel there, but and this is all sitting on top of the oaty layer, as I said, but as you move further out from that, you start to get a little bit more of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. And then as you push toward the extremities of that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, a bit of sweet caramel, a little bit of Werther's Original, and a wee touch of and a wee touch of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. They're all sitting on top of the oaty layer. So yeah, I like how that I really do like how that goes together in this beer. So it's a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, pretty awesome stuff from that perspective. So yeah, I think that covers the middle third of the palate in this beer. Let's go on to the back third of your palate. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, white bread of course, but the base of the back third of the palate, you can feel the bread crust gets a little bit more kind of grainy. Things, as I've always said, more bitter grainy flavours come out towards the back of the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward, but yeah, bit of a more grainy, bittery thing there. The wholemeal brown bready layer is just that little bit taller, and as I say, you get a wee bit more graininess out of it. Then above that, you've got that nice kind of fluffy white bready character. And yeah, that white bready character is actually a lot more light and airy. And then above that, you get the wheat, of course, and the wheat is just a little touch. You've got a little touch of that wheaty bitiness there. Above all of that, you start to get some of the more airy, yeasty esters coming out of the beer. And yeah, it's just this sort of very light farmhousey bread, little touch of honeycomb and maybe a very slight woody character to it. But yeah, that sits above the slightly spicy wheaty layer. But absolutely, on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a lot taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together in the middle third of your palate actually. So I like how that goes together. Yeah, malty side of things, I think that's it covered. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things for this beer then. Green component first. So yeah, green component for me. Back corners of the palate, you've got a really nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's got a little touch of herbal quality, but then very quickly it becomes more kind of floral and aromatic, and it almost just gets a little touch spicy as you go toward the kind of front corners of your palate there. Round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. And yeah, so I like that nice little bit of floral aromaticity. But yeah, round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, as I said. But yeah, I think the way that that goes together is very, very nice for sure. Yeah, the green component in this one for me, it does indicate a more late addition and dry hopping focused mentality, I guess you could say, with this beer. It doesn't quite have the big deepness and dankness you would expect of that you would expect if you had early addition hopping. I think yeah, mainly late addition and dry hopping within this beer. But overall, I'd say the green component, yeah, a little bit floral, good little bit of grassy zestness, and it's quite oily in that sense too. So yeah, let's focus on the front third of the palate and the let's focus on the front third of the palate and that little bit of a little bit of the more fruity side of things. And this is quite interesting actually. Stratas are an interesting hop for me. You get that right away in this beer. But yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in the beer. But then yeah, the base of the front third of your palate of the beer is more kind of smooth and white bready. Above that though, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on the fruity side of things. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little touch of passion fruit there, and it's got a bit of pungency. But as soon as you come further forward from that, you're getting a mix of the mango and the melon, and it's kind of like, I think the melon kind of dominates a little bit. I've always found, for me at least, remember, beer is subjective. People will interpret things and taste things in different ways, but for me, melon is always quite a dominant flavour. So as soon as you come forward from that little bit more pungent passion fruit, it's a big oily, melony type note. As you move forward from that, you start to get the slightly more juicy mango, and as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of a more it's got a bit of a more apricot-y, slightly papaya type thing, which I think is going to come from, that's going to come from the Idaho 7 And this one, to be honest with you, the soft tropical notes will come from the Idaho 7, whereas, yeah, the melony notes are coming from the Strata. But as you push forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, you are getting this kind of oily strawberry sort of thing, which is something you would always associate with Strata. The Strata for me is very much a bit of melon, bit of strawberry, and you can get that right away. So the Idaho 7 is almost sitting kind of underneath everything and giving you the softness to the beer, mixing in, you know, sitting on top of the malty things, you know, giving you the softness. Then you've got the bit of passion fruit, bit of oily melon, and then the more kind of strawberry, juicy kind of oily strawberry note in the front half of that front third of your palate. So that's really interesting with this one. But as I say, overall, flavour wise, this beer is quite a more malty and slightly sticky and oily fruity New England IPA. So well, just IPA in general. I think calling this an American IPA is probably the most accurate. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour. Let's round off with the mouthfeel in this beer then. So mouthfeel wise for me, it's definitely top end to mid bodied, bottom end to full bodied, kind of up there. The carbonation is very smooth. It's quite an oily and kind of slick New England IPA, this one for me. So I do like that with this one. Yeah, nice kind of oily and slick sort of thing. But you also have that, yeah, you do also have that nice, just little bit of cleanliness to the mouthfeel too. It's really interesting. So yeah, quite an oily and slick IPA, this one for me. IBU wise, I think this one's a kind of standard 30, maybe pushing up to 40. I'm not 100% sure. Always take my IBU counts with a bit of a pinch of salt in these reviews. But yeah, malt base is nice and smooth underneath, but a bit sweeter on top. You get a little touch of the booziness out of this beer, and you've also got the big kind of oily sweetness in it as well. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, interesting this one. Absolutely an American IPA rather than being West Coast or New England, but another solid beer from Slowburn, and you can't ask for much more than that these days. And the Strata and Idaho 7 are really giving you some interesting notes in there. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this one. So yeah, this one was the Layers of Light, an 8.5% hazy double IPA, as Slowburn are calling it. And these guys are from Hvidovre to the southwest of Copenhagen in Denmark. Really cool to return to them again after what feels like a wee while, and it's always cool to review Danish beers for you here on the channel. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Till the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Slowburn as well, and we will return to these guys at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, slange it, skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon.